Hello, I'm Paul Blunden, founder of UX 24/7, and we help product owners, designers, and researchers deliver high-performing products and services. Today's interview is for my series with product owners and leaders. We'll be finding out about the challenges they face, how their role and the function has changed in recent times, and even what influence AI is having. But we'll get to all of that later. For now, let's meet my guest. Hello, Tom, and thank you for giving up your time to speak with me today. Can I start by asking you to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi, and thanks for having me. My name is Tom Harle. I have a small consultancy of me called Everybody Go. Currently we're working with a large European sort of financial initiative, a payments initiative. My background is in user experience design. And before that, I was attempting to become a rock star. So I was a failed rock star to my CV. Unfortunately, I should have considered trying to do that with a trombone. It didn't go particularly well. So I moved into user experience design about 15 years ago, and I've sort of evolved now into the product space in the sort of last 4 or 5 years. So yeah.
Fantastic. And what attracted you into the product space?
To be honest, it wasn't a conscious decision to sort of to move across, and sometimes I still wonder if I really qualify to speak on issues of product, and probably that'll become clear as we talk more. It sort of was a natural evolution. I think the kind of role of UX, sort of junior designer and then the UX lead and sort of strategy lead and things like this, as you sort of work up the, if you like, up the decision making. You become more senior in teams. I certainly felt that I was sort of adopting more of a product role anyway, that there was so much leaning back into the organizations and kind of coordination stuff that the UXer starts doing, that it just felt like a natural evolution, to broaden that scope and to call it a product role. And I think UX has evolved as well as a discipline, that a lot of the time you can be asking very similar questions as a kind of product owner or strategist that a UX person is having to answer anyway to be able to do their work effectively. So what has attracted me, I guess, is being able to work where I like to be, which is sort of in ecosystems where the piece that you're working on is part of a much bigger success story that you're working towards, and being mindful of that and having some influence on those other parts of the puzzle, but with a core focus of whatever the thing is that you're doing. I've come through digital sort of pathway, I guess. So I've always been kind of working on apps and websites and things, but like there'll always be other parts of an experience. And I think product has become the place to discuss those other parts and to figure out how your part fits and in what timelines and all that kind of thing. But when I started, I guess that was more of a UX question, and maybe product was a little less mature at that point. I don't know, but yeah.
Well, it's interesting, because in the email exchange we had before, you said, well, I'm in the product space, but I don't know that I'm a product person. But actually, yeah, your perspective on how the role and the function have changed, I'm really interested in it, because it's kind of the question behind my question. To me, it seems to be becoming quite homogenous, and all the different roles are feeding in and products sort of popping out. So I'd really be interested in your perspective on that, Tom.
Yeah, like I say, it's because I feel like it's been me that's changed, and it's very hard for me to know whether the roles have dramatically shifted, because I've obviously got quite a limited scope on that. But I think it's worth also saying that my background is primarily in agencies, and often in those agencies we've had quite a greenfield scope, new product discovery, ideation, kind of quite creative stuff. Originally I was working in advertising, which was very kind of, there's a lot of campaign thinking in there, as well as the kind of platform stuff that we were doing. And in those instances, I guess the role of a product owner was often confused with project manager. They were feeling quite, they were the ones who owned the Jira board and sort of made sure that stand-ups happened, and kind of, the kind of procedural stuff. And the UX team at the time, which I was lucky to be part of, would be the ones bringing the ideas and bringing teams together and working, kind of going out to technical and figuring out what's feasible, or looking at different client problems and kind of trying to ideate. And I think, obviously that is so much now of what the product space is about, right? It's about that kind of solution alignment across teams, and is about kind of gaining momentum towards, whatever kind of increment you're working towards. So I think, how have they evolved? I think UX is in a really interesting, challenging space right now, but it seems like a lot of the stuff that I loved as a UXer is now what product has managed to make a name for itself doing, which is really this kind of creative facilitation, I think, about whatever your goals are at that time and how to meet them.
And what do you think sort of a product owner's accountabilities are now then?
Yeah, that's interesting. I think that, well, first and foremost, I suppose if you came into a space where there was zero accountability, the first thing is to define what it should be. I think as a lot of, I guess you're going to ask me a bit about success metrics, but I think something that the most successful teams that I've been on, even if I haven't been necessarily a product owner, have been the ones where there's been really clear outcomes, in everyone's minds, but also some sort of numerical attributes to those outcomes as well, that they were like very specific goals we're working towards, and we're able to check in on those over time. So I think there's an accountability to the product outcomes, I guess, is one of the first things I would say. And also to the team. I think that you, as a product owner, you need to be quite a motivating force. I think there's some, this obviously isn't in the kind of the Scrum rule book, but I do think it's helpful for a product owner to be quite a motivational person, and someone who can really bring not just clarity on requirements, but also like clarity on use cases, clarity on user needs and user problems, and really kind of help development teams understand the value of the thing that they're working on, why certain decisions are being made, and sort of an accountability in that respect, that everyone across the team is really clear on the holistic picture of this product, not just on this sprint's goals or what it is that they're specifically required to deliver, that people are thrilled to be making something meaningful on a bigger level.
Yeah, that's interesting. And I guess, you talked a bit about metrics there and what have you. I am interested in the kind of toolkit that product owners have and how that's changing, or what they're using to sort of keep a handle on or keep the communication going. Have you got a view on that?
No, I wish I did, to be honest. I think, I've been on some teams where it's felt very, you kind of think, oh, case studies will be written about this one, and I've been on other teams where it's been a complete disaster, right? And I think everyone can recognize where there's somewhere things are happening so fast that all the things you should be doing at this stage, and you think, oh, actually, come on, let's just crack through, because we need to show progress on certain things. I think I think the key thing that has worked, the projects that I think back that have been really great in this respect, about really being clear on the success of a certain milestone, have been when you've used those success criteria as part of the design brief, if you like. And that sounds so obvious, but actually it's happened so rarely in my career that maybe because of the agency thing, that often you've already been hired as an agency to do something maybe a little bit wackier than like an in-life team would have come up with, if they're sort of on a long-standing product. Maybe they, teams are working differently, right? But I think projects that I think have gone really well, there was one where we had what seemed like quite a dry brief, which was to reimagine a sign-up process for an auction house. And it was right at the beginning of the pandemic, actually. We were sort of working with this company anyway, in my old role. And they'd sort of thought, oh, we might need to go digital at some point in the future. We've got these really big problems that we're facing with compliance. And, we often find that people can't buy a lot, even after they've won the bid, that actually we don't know enough about them as a user to kind of be sure that they really are who they say they are. And there's all kind of money laundering questions and things like this. So they were sort of like, we know these are really big problems. We're not going to solve them just yet. You know, can you just give us some cool ideas because you're a cool agency? Can you help us? And then the pandemic hit. And it was like, well, actually, these are huge problems now because they can't come in and show all this documentation. We have no actual way of validating with these people face to face, which is what they always used to fall back on. And so that became the basis for quite a dry piece of work to reimagine the sign-up process. But we went into it knowing that there were really significant, numbers not being hit that was causing quite a huge workload for quite a small number of people who were becoming very overworked about, basically they were able to tell us the exact challenges that they were having to solve, and we were able to use those as part of our brief for the kind of front end experience. But then also say, right, when are we going to check on this? Are we going to do it after 1 week? Are we going to do it after 3 weeks? What's the regular reporting on this? And that entire process was actually built into our planning for the project. So we'd sort of, right from identifying, being told the needs and digging into them and turning them into kind of specific interventions, we'd already planned out when we were going to check in on the success metrics and what we might do about it. And I think that that was a very obvious one where there were such clear needs, and it was a kind of existing flow that we were trying to improve. But in terms of toolkit, it was just making sure we had that kind of the appropriate things flagged in the right way on the analytics profile, and that we were able to, we could look for what we were going to need to know, that we designed all that in advance. That's also another thing when you leave analytics to like the last thing in the last sprint, and you haven't got time to go and add the appropriate flags and bits of code where you need it, or it's already too late and it's shipped. And so doing all that early was really helpful to us, but it doesn't happen often enough. I can tell you.
No, I can imagine. And you alluded there to quite a few sort of challenges that product owners face, either dealing internally or externally. I wonder if you've got a sort of sense of priority around the challenges product owners face, and what their sort of biggest challenges are, either working internally or working with an external agency, for example.
I mean, from where I've sat, the challenges have been so different in different organizations. I'm trying to sort of think of an average of it. I think what I found really, the impact I've seen product owners have most is when they effectively connect, when they can work into their organization, whether they're already in there or whether as an agency product owner who's working with a client organization, to refocus that organization around the goals of the product. And I think that to me is like the biggest challenge that the product owner will face if the organization isn't organized in that way already. But it's also the kind of, it's not really the product owner's challenge. I think it's a bigger challenge that the client organizations, with so many competing needs for their time and attention and resource, they will often have not appreciated that great things can happen if they can empower their product owners to work more efficiently. So I think a more recent project that I've been worked on with an automotive startup, it was the app team that was the one who ultimately ended up cutting across the silos of the wider organization with the user experience focus. Like, no, there wasn't really another team who was like delivering a kind of multi-silo experience in the way that the app was. And I think that as a product owner of that app, it wasn't me, it was someone on my team, but she, that was her biggest challenge, was actually getting two different teams with their own backlogs and their own milestones to speak to each other at the appropriate time, that this third thing, the app, could actually succeed and deliver based on its goals. So I think if you can, the challenge in the various things you need to do to enable that to happen, whether it's on kind of empathy building, kind of alignment? Do you need to kind of persuade someone in a C-suite? Do you need to fund a whole bunch of research? Do you need to get new funding? Whatever it is you need to do to be able to start that pivot towards a more kind of outcome-driven experience delivery organization, I think you'll do pretty well as a product owner. But it's incredibly challenging, and it'll be different in every organization.
Yeah, that does sound challenging. So, was the kind of soft management problems that are the biggest ones in almost every area, isn't it?
I think so.
And I'm interested to understand about sort of the importance of the customer in the product development process. I'm particularly interested in, what's the product owner view of that? Do you see much around the
yeah, and remember, I come from UX. In theory, I should be telling you 100% customer importance. There's no, it's a really difficult one to answer, because I think, of course, without customers at some point, we don't have products that are sustainable because they can't fund themselves and that kind of thing. But I think it's dangerous to put too much emphasis on the gathering and immediate responding to customer needs piece, actually. And I say that with because I'm definitely going to get to a but I think what I think happens a lot, if you completely do that, if you completely go on discovery and kind of customer needs and you work really well to that, I think we miss a lot, that organizations will do best if people can see in them a sense of purpose of that organization, or a sense of some sort of personality or set of values that as a customer I can relate to, and I will engage with these products because they fulfill who I am as a person. So like the reason Patagonia or I don't know, Innocent at the start, things that have a really clear personal tone that people get excited about and want to tell each other about and are proud to associate with. I think that has to come, that can't just come from customers. Like, they won't tell you that that's what, like, there needs to be, you have to come into the world with a sense of who you are as a product organization, I think, or a sense of your enemy that you're looking for co-conspirators to solve. If you make a product that's against something and you want people to be like, yeah, we agree and we'll use it, and kind of stuff like that. So I think that's really important. And I think a lot of the time you can put too much on, let's do some research and find out. And it's like, yeah, but what do we want to say? What do we think what do we believe should exist in this space? And can we build that and see, if we were right? Can we kind of create, some sort of MVP, or really really, as real as possible at that point, provocation of that, and let's see what heat we generate around that. And then, if we don't, why not? Did the message not come through? Was it not easy to access? Should it have been delivered in a different format? That's when to me, that's when the customer really then takes center stage again, is like, how can we help you discover that? And over time, then you grow together. But I think a sense of what will be the shared goals between you and your customer, you have to have some as well as an organization to be able to share them. So yeah,
that's an interesting perspective. Do you think an organization can act as you've described and also be customer centric?
Yeah, I think so. I think if you need to establish the terms of reference between you and the customer. And then I think, so in, the sense of Patagonia obviously is great clothing of performance wear, but there's also, a lot that they're frequently talking about, what are they giving back? What are they, what are they doing to climate change and all these things? So there's a whole a dialogue there that's kind of been implied, I think, in the kind of customer relationship between Patagonia and its customers. And then within that, obviously, then you make the best versions of those products that you can by the customer, and that are appropriately priced and easy to purchase and all that kind of stuff. But I think you need to, yeah, I'm going to keep referring to whatever this kind of ecosystem is between you and the customer. You're both in this shared community of other brands, other moments in people's lives, and how do you fit into that? You obviously need to understand that fully. So that's customer centricity as well, right? But I think you need to come with I don't think no one just wants someone kind of following the customer saying, what can I get for you next, right? You need to also be a leader as a product creator and sort of define some of those terms yourselves. Otherwise people won't get excited about you, I don't think.
No, I think you're right. It's that sort of secret sauce thing, isn't it? That they always want with startups. It's the same, I guess, with every product. You still got to stand out and differentiate. And that's not always going to come from the customer. In fact, not often going to come from the customer, I guess.
I think, yeah. And I think one of the challenges, a lot of research work will go to where the customer is today. And, the more forward-thinking organizations might already have a view on where the world is going and be working towards a product that they think will be the exact right thing at some moment in the future. They can see the kind of tectonic plates shifting and they're saying, okay, we want to be standing across them at that moment and be the right kind of bridge between these different trends. And there can be some challenges in making sure that you're right by the customer, because obviously they're not there yet either. So that's a real issue in gathering that data and making those bets, I guess, on what should be the next things to do. But I think if you already have a kind of a North Star of your own as a product organization, you're probably more able to track when new trends are coming up that detract from that. I think if you've got a sense of where you're trying to get to, then as you see other things coming in, new research insights, whatever, you can kind of chart, you can decide whether to pivot or persevere or whatever the proper words are. But, I think that needs to come from inside the organization. I don't think it can be completely come from the customer.
No, and the interviews I've done so far, the one thing that's emerged out of them is that product owners almost seem to have taken ownership of the customer in terms of whether they're doing what you describe or they're doing more research or less. But they've sort of taken the role of representing the customer within the organization. And I wonder whether you'd noticed anything of that from your observations around product owners or that space.
It's not something I've particularly observed, but it doesn't surprise me to hear that. I think, as the person who's bridging internal teams, trying to align whatever it is that you need as a product owner to be able to, to ask your team to be able to deliver for the customer. If you're set up correctly and you're tracking those metrics, you're probably going to be the first person who hears back from the customer as well, right? So I think that makes sense that you as an owner would, just like you facilitate discussions between your other stakeholders, you would bring the user in as well. That doesn't surprise me. I think potentially it does a disservice to people who may be on your team who could really lighten the load of a product owner. That seems quite hard to also be, having to represent the customer in a fair and effective way when you also have all these other conflicting kind of priorities. And there are, hopefully people on teams like UX researchers, potentially market intelligence, people like that who, have dedicated years of ways of seeing and sharing what they've seen into meaningful ways. So I think ideally the product owner would brief those teams in just the same way as anyone else would, to with their kind of product needs, internal, what is it we're looking to do in the next year? What's our sort of roadmap looking like? How can we best validate that? Are we set up for the challenges we might see ahead in terms of other entrants to the market or sort of technologies coming in that could disrupt us? Like, that can't all lie on the product owners. No. Head, right? There's too much. But there's it doesn't surprise me that that's happening, of course, because if you've had to pull a whole organization around supporting you as a product owner to deliver a product, then they probably are not quite aligned on the feedback as well. So yeah.
And obviously we're, well, not necessarily obviously, but UX 24/7, we're mainly a design research agency as much as anything. So I wanted to understand the sort of what are the greatest challenges that brands or product owners face at the point where maybe they are going to do some research. What are the challenges they face making that happen?
Making it happen. I mean, budget is obviously a huge one at the right time. Planning it, you know, something that suddenly turns up on a sprint that you think, oh, it'd be great to validate this. This is actually, we hadn't understood the complexity of this interaction. Let's run something really light touch and just find out. Still costs money, still quite difficult to achieve within the timeline that you need it. So the planning side and being kind of knowing how high an altitude you take in that planning, you know, like, oh yes, we'll run some research in 3 months. Do we need to know exactly what's in the script yet? No, but we need to know the kind of recruit we might need to do, which nations will be in, all that kind of stuff. Like, at what level do you plan, and then obviously then how do you get buy-in for the budget that you put together around that, versus then in the moment needing something quite directly that you know, you're not able to deliver because you haven't got that budget, or there's some sort of cycle that you need to be part of that you've missed. I think that's a huge issue. But I think the other thing, like I was saying before, is like asking the right kinds of questions. I mean, yes, of course, usability questions and validating stuff that you've built is really important. And using all you know, some of that stuff you can do with Quant as well, and do it kind of once stuff's out in the field. So hopefully that's a bit easier. But I think knowing, like, being really clear on what you're trying to, like, are you actually trying to learn what a user thinks about it today, or are you trying to sort of track where they're heading, what else other things they might be coming up with in future, and whether you'll meet later on. I think that sometimes I've worked on projects where there's been a real usability focus, but actually the most value has come about informing future new stuff on roadmaps down the line. And sometimes you wonder if it would have been more effective if you just focused on one or the other from the outset. But
and has that happened because of a sort of a narrow focus, or a lack of understanding about the opportunity, or something else?
Yeah, I mean, you probably see this as well as an agency side, but I think a lot of the time agency product teams will have been hired by maybe one stakeholder with one set of goals, and you know, they've got the funding for what they've needed to do with their agency by setting out on a journey, and you very quickly realize that there's more to that journey than they expected, and it has much wider implications, you know, across the business. And so suddenly then you think, oh, it would have been great. Suddenly there's all this new value you've sort of discovered in a way that it was always out there, but you go into a process with one interview plan, and suddenly all this other stuff comes up during the sessions that you need to pass on somehow, or you need to respond to. So you start ideating there, and suddenly you know, you've got an entire kind of product suite ready to go. But so I think that I think if you're mindful that those things can happen, and you sort of make sure you can check on it. We're actually with my current client, that's exactly what we're working on right now, is how do we make sure we have the budget for the next year or 18 months when, you know, we only know our product roadmap for the next 3 months, you know, because we're getting to a big milestone and we're looking to do quite a lot of testing at that moment. So should we just massively overpitch and just get a load of money? Well, that doesn't sound like a great idea from the kind of planning perspective, and money might not be there, we might fail. So how do you appropriately kind of make space for those discussions about, you know, getting who you need around a research plan pretty quickly to be able to inform the team so that they're not blocked by not having information that would really help them.
Right. We've spent quite a bit of time so far talking about the challenges people face. I wondered if you could tell me about a product-related success story that you're proud of, or that.
Yeah, one. I mean, there's a really the kind of the celebrity one that I like, and then there's I already talked about the doll one, which is this this sign-up journey for the auction house. I think that was just such a, like, on all levels, that was a really successful project, even though the outcome, if there's you know, a sign-up flow probably won't make it into many people's portfolios anytime soon, but it was a really successful product that really helped the client a lot. So I was really proud of that. We had one more recently with the automotive startup I was working with, where they were about a year from delivering the vehicle that they were planning to deliver. And they had a big press event planned where people could come and drive the prototypes. And it was all, you know, it was in a kind of fancy hotel and all that kind of stuff. And we really pushed, and we didn't need to, but we really thought it was it was a really good milestone for us anyway, because we could see what we then would need to achieve before the customers got deliveries of these cars. We really pushed to have our product, which is an app linked to the car, as part of the experience of these journalists when they came to this event. And I was chatting to one who's like a huge YouTube star who I've been following his channel for, I don't know, 15 years or something, and this guy's now one of the presenters on it. And I was like, oh, we've built this app. And he's like, we never see apps at these events, right? Because they're always, you know, so many automotive companies, just like we were actually at the time as an organization, were leaving that kind of stuff to the last minute, that it was all like finalization stuff, like putting the app together and connecting it and integrating it. But we'd really done the work, and it was hell. It was absolute hell, like, for about 3 months to get these teams to work together. We had an agency helping us, we had a new team, new product owner, but we did the work, and it really, you know, what it needed to do was demonstrate the value of this particular startup in real terms. And it showed that because we'd put the data in it. So we'd actually integrated something like a year before we needed to. And it actually impressed our audience as well, which was the journalists at the time. So it was just a really nice moment of, like, actually, when you really live the kind of MVP mindset, and you really push to actually show something working from end to end, even if it's just one thing, and you get that in someone's hands, it can be magical. So I was really proud of that.
Yeah, that's, I mean, powerful outcome. And is it, was the reason behind the success because you were working in this kind of MVP mindset and getting everyone together?
I mean, the reason behind the success was because we were working with a bunch of amazing, very talented, very committed, you know, developers, designers, and colleagues across the business. Like, you know, they came together around it really amazingly. But I think the fact that we went, so 2 or 3 months before that moment, we had said, right, this is our scope for this thing. And it was, you know, if you think of it, it was a car app. And if you think of all the things car apps can do these days, and what you might want to show off, we were like, we're not doing any of that. We're going to show one piece of data. And we sort of divided out. So there was a data piece, there was like a front end piece. Everyone had like the same load, you know, so there was like some really nice front end interactions. It was on 2 platforms. There was some nice graphing, and there was this really nice piece of data that was coming from the cars. And that was it. But it was enough there to tell a story, to hold up and show and point at that one thing. And I think if we tried to do any more than that, we actually wouldn't have hit any of those goals, you know, but we were just really clear. We'll have one really cool interaction. We'll have 2 really nice screens. You guys work on the graphing. Let's get an agency to help with some animation. Let's make sure we've got that data, which was the hardest part, actually, to get it, you know, from through the various bits of car and out over the cloud and back into our phone. And it all came together, and it was, yeah, all the messaging we needed to do with stakeholders was like, this is all we're doing. Okay, that's what we're working towards, is just this. And they were like, oh, but couldn't you add nope. Yeah, so it was that MVP focus that you talk about. It looked shinier than what I consider most MVPs need to look like, but in a way that was part of the M, I guess, was that it was sort of, it needed to be journalist appropriate and sort of set the tone for what we knew was going to come next. But yeah, it was, yeah, that minimal focus really helped us and paid off massively. So yeah.
Yeah, it sounds like it. And Tom, you've got such a wide range of knowledge and experience across such a different range of areas in the sort of product space, digital space. I'm really interested to ask you if you have any thoughts about sort of chat GPT and AI and how that might be changing things from your perspective, if at all.
I'm just so conscious of the amount of LinkedIn chat GPT related predictions, and I'm definitely, you know, not I don't aspire to be one of those people who has any of those. I think I actually today heard of a really powerful use case that we're working on in my current setup, which is in I guess in customer support, actually, that you find with kind of distributed teams and agile teams, that a lot of the kind of linking knowledge isn't necessarily where you need it to be. That there's documentation over here and over there, and someone's had a really great meeting about that one thing, but they haven't then written it up or whatever. And I think as a way into as well, essentially search as a way into more nuanced questions about how things are going, or what you should do next within an organization. I can imagine an AI assistant could really help kind of signpost in really rich and like useful ways. Like, I think internal search is always a bit crap, right? And you sort of hear these knowledge bases where everyone has to kind of tag themselves on stuff that just seems complete, and these things tend to go off into a world and die. But I think AI could really help, you know, subtly do that without anyone really having to give more than they already were, but just through, you know, listening to the right sources, could be a really powerful thing that I think would help teams work better, a lot better. I've seen a lot, been in contact with an AI user research platform. I think that's really interesting. I think I would have to be really careful about the kinds of questions I would ask from that process, and the amount of weight and how much I would ask my stakeholders to believe in what I was recommending as a result of an AI-based user test. I think there's a lot of thinking to do there about what is user testing. I don't think it's running it through a machine necessarily, but I think it's really interesting, and I think there are specific moments when it could be really helpful. But yeah, I think I have a bit of a blind spot actually on what some of the opportunities might be, or what some of the threats might be as we go forward as product owners. I think we're okay for now. There's this meme, isn't there? Like, you need to you need to tell AI what you want from it for it to work, and then it's like a couple of line breaks, and then it says like, we're safe. You know, I think it's developers written, like the client would have to appropriately ask for the thing or something. Yeah, I think product is so multifaceted right now. I can't imagine, I'm sure, you know, at the moment today, in my limited 2023 brain, I cannot imagine a world where AI is appropriately taking decisions, but also maintaining that purpose and that kind of sense of belief that product teams need to have in, you know, in a path that their product can help with. So I think we'll probably get there, but I think at the moment, I think there's enough to do.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. And you're not the first person who's sort of talked to me about back office, you know, really the back office stuff that AI is going to do. And I can't help but feel that that's possibly where the most value will end up being, is in all the mundane stuff. And it just does simple things like you described, solves meeting note problems, you know, and stuff like that. But anyway, I shall probably become retired before it's making me redundant, but that's my hope anyway.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, absolutely.
Anyway, finally, Tom, I wanted to ask you, what's your sort of biggest learning since being in and around the product area, or your biggest learning for product owners, perhaps?
Yeah, I think the personal journey I've been on, and I think it's really helped. I think it's helped me be better kind of product kind of experience lead person, is about the value of inclusivity and the value of actively seeking alternate views on things, and like really actively. So I think there's been a whole, obviously the last couple of years, a big thing about certain movements around broadening participation in general, Black Lives Matter, like Me Too, all these things that have obviously, like, as a white straight man, have been really on me to do the work, right? I think that there's one thing to do the work, but I think to really actively, like, not just do what, like, the bare minimum, but also to really seek out what more you can do. I think as a product owner, if you're talking about gaining different user perspectives, like really on the edges of what you would consider your normal use cases, like going really to the edges of the edges and using those as reference points and gathering those inputs, but also in terms of the people you bring on board in your teams and how they, may not have the sector experience, or they may not come from quite the same line of work, but they will bring something really rich and amazing into your team if they join. And I think that's something that I found really rewarding, and learning that it's very rare that I will have the answer in a team, but if I can put the right people together, then great things happen. So yeah, that's been something I think maybe it's just the kind of confidence of youth that I've now lost. I don't know, but yeah, I definitely have gained a lot from seeing other people flourish by just really seeking and championing their perspectives. So yeah.
Fantastic. That's a good note to end on. Tom, thank you so much for spending time to talk to me today. It's been fascinating hearing your thoughts, particularly, I mean, having been in product and sort of looking in on product, I think you bring a really fresh set of ideas to this interview series. I really appreciate your time.
Thanks very much. Yeah, thanks for having me.
Well, I hope you enjoyed hearing from Tom and getting his perspective. He certainly brings something different to this interview series, having been not only involved within the product development process as a product owner or managing product owners, but also outside it through UX design and strategy and operating as an agency, providing services even into brands doing this kind of work. Anyway, my name's Paul Blunden. I'm founder of UX 24/7, and we help product owners, designers, and researchers deliver high-performing products and services. You can find out more about what we do by visiting our website. That's ux247.com, or find me on LinkedIn and tap me up there. And of course, subscribe to this channel, and there'll be another interview coming along soon. Thanks very much for watching.